I had a rather strange experience at my viewing of Love Lies Bleeding. The theater smelled musky, and everyone showed up with their Dune popcorn bucket for some reason. Hey there, and welcome to Post Credits with Gil Garcia, where we go beyond the final scene of the most violent and sexy lesbian A24 films. And on today's docket, we have Rose Glass's action thriller, Love Lies Bleeding. For the second time in 3 weeks, I went to the cinema to watch a lesbian crime movie. 3 weeks ago, I watched Drive Away Dolls, and now this movie. Lesbians are really eating good at theaters right now. And on today's show, we'll be returning to our regularly formatted show where I'll give you my expectations for the film, the spoiler-free review, then our filmmaking factoids. Given the recency of this film, there will also be a spoiler-filled review after our outro, because this movie has an ending that we must talk about. I'm telling you, the ending really caught me by surprise on this one. Now, I'm going to make some comparisons between Love Lies Bleeding and Drive Away Dolls in this episode. I kind of wanted to do a two-parter or a double feature, if you will, for this episode, but instead I was like, I don't want to talk about Drive Away Dolls. I didn't really like that movie. And although they share some similarities, they couldn't be further away from each other in terms of style, tone, and quality. Looking ahead to next week's lineup of content, we'll have a video review up and a podcast up for Ghostbusters Frozen Empire that will be up on the YouTube channel. Link to the YouTube page will be in the podcast description if you're listening on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. The April review lineup will be coming up shortly, so if you want to hear me review a specific movie that I haven't gotten to, just let me know about it on social media. I'm also planning a special 420 episode for all you stoners out there, so be on the lookout for that. Now, I fully expect this episode to be one of the shorter episodes of the podcast since I went into this movie without my notebook. I'm going to do everything I can to recall and review just on a whim using memory. So if you're wondering why the latest episodes have kind of landed around 30 minutes or less, it's because I'm doing more and more off-the-cuff recordings to make the show feel a bit more natural and less robotic. I'm experimenting right now with a lot of different styles to improve the show, so these last couple weeks have been more improvisational than what you're probably used to from hearing from me at the earlier episodes that I've done on the podcast. Feel free to leave me any feedback. If you like the shorter episodes, if you want them longer, especially I want to hear what you think about the new podcast theme song too that I recently uploaded. So thank you to the person that copyright claimed the old one. I really appreciate that, even though I paid you money for it. But I'm really happy with the new podcast theme song, and let me know what you guys think. So without further ado, let's get into the show. This is Act 1, my expectations of Love Lies Bleeding. Gym manager Lou falls for Jackie, a bodybuilder who is passing through town en route to a competition in Las Vegas. When the two women get involved in a grisly series of unfortunate events, their loyalty and love gets tested. Love Lies Bleeding is directed by Rose Glass, known for Saint Maud, another A24 film. Written by Weronika Tafilska, known for Love Life and The Patient. And the film stars Kristen Stewart as Lou, known for Adventureland, Spencer, and American Ultra. Also, she's an Academy Award-nominated actress, guys. Katie O'Brien stars as Jackie. She's known for Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania and The Mandalorian. And it also has Ed Harris as Lou Sr., four-time Academy Award nominee, known for The Rock, Appaloosa, The Truman Show, and Top Gun Maverick. Other side characters are Dave Franco as JJ, Jenna Malone as Beth, Anna Baryshnikov as Daisy. With one of my favorite trailers of the year so far, Love Lies Bleeding captivated me right off the bat. A24 has certainly kind of cornered the market in terms of mid-budget dramatic films. It encourages bold, gritty filmmakers to make experimental and unique films. Seeing A24 kind of go from this lowly studio that made independent and somewhat pretentious art house pictures into an Academy Award factory juggernaut has been truly awesome to watch. Just a few of my favorite A24 films. Let's go over some of them. So there's obviously Ex Machina. I love that film, and that's one of my favorites of all time. Good Time with Robert Pattinson, The Disaster Artist, Eighth Grade, Hereditary, Midsommar, Uncut Gems, Everything Everywhere All at Once. You know, the list goes on and on with what this studio is producing. I put them right up there above Warner Brothers, above Universal Studios as probably the best filmmaking studio in Hollywood today. Disney, of course, being near the bottom now. So, like, for me, whenever I see the A24 logo appear on screen, I know for a fact that I'm in for one hell of a ride, one roller coaster of a picture. And the trailer for Love Lies Bleeding featured some extremely striking visuals from our main three characters, Kristen Stewart, Katie O'Brien, and Ed Harris. It's set to the tune of Small Town Boy by Bronski Beat, and we see shots of Katie showing off her incredible bodybuilding physique. Kristen's acting her ass off in a shootout, and Ed is drenched in red with a revolver aimed directly at the camera. The trailer put the film right on my radar as one of my most anticipated films of 2024 when I recorded my Gilly Awards podcast back in January. And what makes this trailer great, and what I've always talked about on the show, is what makes a great trailer is that you need to make it inviting and captivating, and also have the ability to tell the story without giving too much away. I felt like the trailer for Love Lies Bleeding toes that fine line where it gets the point across without spoilers and revealing the biggest moments of the film. And I mean biggest moments, and we'll get to that later. Add to that, the subject matter of the movie covers the draw of seeing Kristen Stewart take on a film so daring and violent was another significant factor as to why I was excited for this movie. Stewart is an Academy Award nominated actress now and actually had a great chance of winning the award for Best Leading Actress for her role in Spencer, but she still does not get the credit that she deserves. It feels like the Twilight franchise has left a mark on her that she is so desperately trying to shed. And if there's one studio that can help shed a franchise actor's reputation, it's A24. They did it with Robert Pattinson in Good Time, they did it with Daniel Radcliffe in Swiss Army Man, and they certainly did it with Adam Sandler in Uncut Gems. So at this stage of Kristen's career, the woman has made a massive amount of money. She has openly come out of the closet as a lesbian icon. She's been nominated for an Oscar, and now she can pick and choose whatever project she wants. Love Lies Bleeding seems to align in just the right number of ways for Kristen, given the subject matter, the director, and the script that was written. Now, looking at Katie O'Brien's previous work, we see a star that is on the rise. She's made an impression on people with her small roles in The Mandalorian, and was one of the small bright spots of Quantumania. And if you look into her life story, it's fascinating how similar her upbringing is to Jackie, the character she plays in this film. I'll get more to that in a bit. Her background in bodybuilding and martial arts plays a huge dividend in the overall immersion of this film, and they couldn't have found a more deserving actress for this role. The shots of her posing in the trailer was so awe-inspiring and really shocking to see. I bet she probably has like less than 5% body fat. It's insane how ripped she is for this role. And like Kristen Stewart, Katie O'Brien, too, is a lesbian, which is a huge victory in casting to have two actual queer actresses lead a major motion picture of this magnitude. Just based on the trailers alone, you could tell that this movie was going to lean heavily into the two characters' sexuality. And based on the early screenings, reviews, and impressions, the critics and audiences called this film a steamy and lust-filled dive into madness, highlighting the sexual chemistry between O'Brien and Stewart. I also want to mention that I've never watched Saint Maud 2, so this is my introduction into the work of Rose Glass, and I was particularly interested in what she had to bring to the table. Between this film, Drive-Away Dolls, and even Poor Things, I think lesbians are having a moment in cinema right now. They're taking over all the films. There's a lot to cover with this movie, so let's not delay any further. It's time to talk about the film, Love Lies Bleeding. This is Act 2, my spoiler-free review. Love Lies Bleeding had high expectations to meet, and I'm happy to announce that this movie exceeded those expectations. I actually really like this movie. It isn't afraid to take creative risks or take liberty with some of the choices of flair, style, and courage. Unlike the dog shit that I watched with Ethan Coen's Drive-Away Dolls, this is a film to be taken seriously, and it actually feels like there is something significant to be said here. The sexual tension is palpable, the action is brutal and intense, and the acting is solid all the way through. From minor characters like Daisy, who's a strung-up junkie with a crush on Lou, to Ed Harris's Lou Sr., There's not a single weak performance throughout the entire movie. Every single actor is pulling their weight and disappearing into their role. It makes the film feel raw, visceral, and truly lived in. Subtler things like the simple phone call that Jackie makes to her family in Oklahoma paints an extremely large picture into who these characters are, what they're trying to accomplish, and why they're doing what they're doing. Hell, the movie opens up with Kristen Stewart with her hand deep in a clogged toilet full of shit, so you know the film isn't afraid to get really gritty with its tone and execution. Anna Baryshnikov's Daisy is also pretty fantastic in here. Daisy appears to be like this one-off comedic relief sort of side character that we get introduced very early on into the film, but she ultimately plays a huge part into the conclusion of the overall film at the end. Her obsession with Lou is one of these critical minor character choices and connections that really gets us into the thick of things. Lou herself is an incredibly flawed and empathetic character. She has a dark past and estrangement to her father. She has been abandoned by her mother, and society at this time in the 1980s looks down on lesbians, referring to them as dykes and casting them out of the social norm. The major complaint I heard about Kristen Stewart's acting during the Twilight days was how she always appeared to have vacant expressions and flat, monotone speech patterns. It was as though every scene she was in felt like Bella was confused about what she was doing and what was happening around her. She felt oblivious in most cases. In this film, Kristen's facial expressions play into her favor. You can see the anguish in Kristen's eyes as she gives a solemn, regretful look throughout the movie. Her face can tell an entire story with just a single look. A simple, non-dialogue scene can play out with a powerful amount of visual exposition just because of her face alone. You can really read into what Lou is thinking and how she is compartmentalizing the entire situation that she's got herself into. This is some of the finest work of Kristen Stewart's career. As for the physicality alone for her role in this movie, she goes through a gamut of situations that places her into an action star role of sorts. Shootouts, crime scene cleanups, sex scenes. The girl is working her ass off in this movie. The most important character trait of Lou is that she's fiercely loyal to her sister, played by Jenna Malone, Beth. Beth is a housewife that is a victim of spousal abuse, the issue being that she's too stubborn to leave or do anything about her husband JJ, played by Dave Franco. The situation slowly elevates between the husband and wife as we go from seeing Beth with a broken arm to a black eye and then to extreme cranial damage. As this is happening, Lou and Jackie are beginning to fall in love, starting as a lust-filled first impression, then to a blossoming relationship. Jackie's aspirations to become a championship bodybuilder are sidelined when she witnesses the catastrophic level of domestic abuse that has been done to Beth from JJ. Prior to this incident, Jackie is a drifter, doing whatever she can to achieve her dream, backpacking and hitchhiking from Oklahoma to Las Vegas, working odd jobs and presumably sexual favors as we're introduced to her with. At first, we're kind of apprehensive of the motives behind Jackie's infatuation with Lou, as we see early on that Jackie fucks guys and girls for housing and work. But Katie gives Jackie such a breath of fresh naivety and sprite. Amongst the physical prowess she represents, you can tell that the character is extremely driven and charismatic, quickly punching a man in the face for calling Lou a dyke the night that they meet. Jackie's physical strength ultimately becomes a weakness of hers as the movie goes along, and her mental state becomes more and more unbalanced. Jackie and Lou consider revenge on JJ for what he does to Beth, and thus brings the main core story into action, as the two women's love and loyalty are tested to the limit. Interlaced between their love affair is the relationship each has with Lou Sr., played by Ed Harris. To Jackie, Lou Sr. is her boss and an unhinged old man that is at the head of a gun-running or racketeering business. To Luis, that's her father, a deeply evil old man who still holds contempt over his daughter for things he forced her to do when she was younger. Ed Harris was an amazing casting choice for this movie. Not only does his on-screen presence command respect and attention, but he's towing the line between psychopath and oddly sympathetic father figure. And despite all the evil and poor decisions that he's making, Lou Sr. still tries to protect his daughters. Ed is getting up there in age, and the 4-time Academy Award nominated actor doesn't have too many of these performances left in him, so I really appreciate what he did in this movie. He's always been one of my favorite actors and one of the best Hollywood character actors, and he proves it even more so in this one. Dave Franco plays a real shithead in this movie. From his ratty-ass 80s mullet to the way he scowls at Lou, you can cut the tension between him and his sister-in-law with a knife. Jenna Malone also is a big contributor to this movie, although she only has about 5 or 10 minutes of screen time. She teams up with Kristen Stewart again. Their first film together was Sean Penn's Into the Wild. In this movie, Jenna's pretty one-dimensional, and her character is kind of frustrating to watch, but you understand the predicament that she is in. Beth is a tragic example of the perilous cycle of domestic abuse, the delusion between love and reality. Beth is too afraid to stand up to her husband over her children, but also she is indoctrinated into loving him. There's something mentally fucked up about her where she still loves and cares for the guy, despite him almost beating her into a coma. The themes of feminism play an important role in the film, but I do say that the movie can be easily digestible for the casual moviegoer at a surface level. Never throughout the runtime did I feel like the script was hitting me over the head with, oh, men are bad, women are good. Instead, I indulged in what the movie had to say about love, loyalty, and the allegorical message of false goddesses and saviors. I certainly expected Love Lies Bleeding to execute the bury your gays trope that many TV shows and movies fall prey to. The trope is basically that a homosexual relationship always ends with at least one or both partners getting murdered or killed, and that a gay relationship can never end happily ever after. Examples of this are Brokeback Mountain, Philadelphia, Rent, Killing Eve, The 100, Walking Dead, Orange is the New Black, and even Game of Thrones has done this. Fortunately, Love Lies Bleeding actually subverts this trope and gives us a strangely cathartic and unexpected finale. Speaking of the finale, the creative risk that this movie takes goes completely off the rails in the final 5 minutes of the movie. You're either here for it or you're not. The final 5 minutes of this movie are really going to decide whether or not you liked it or whether you thought it was a pretentious piece of shit. Oh, man. And you'll understand what I mean when you get to that scene, but I really dug it. It falls in line with various inserted mythical shots that we see throughout the film. It gives the movie a large talking point and separates it from other gritty crime dramas of its time. I do understand how jarring it is, though. The folks in the theater I was with laughed and audibly said, "What the fuck?" at that moment. I think Love Lies Bleeding is an incredibly daring, bold, and original film. It feels like the equivalent of Nicholas Winding Refn's drive for Rose Glass and Kristen Stewart. The striking visuals, performances, sexuality, and brutality make it extremely memorable and entertaining. Although it's a movie that I'm giving a glowing review for, I do not recommend it for everyone. Its art house presentation can be off-putting, and the normalization of lesbian sex scenes can be a huge detractor for casual audiences. For the pure excellence of the way this movie came together, I give Love Lies Bleeding 4.5 out of 5. Another stellar film for 2024, and it may get some recognition at my end of the year Gilly Awards. The next stop on our journey is the part of the show that I call Act 3, Beyond the Final Scene. A heart-pounding, iron-pumping descent into the heady heart of obsession and desire, says Hannah Strong, a top critic on Rotten Tomatoes. Love Lies Bleeding is holding incredibly strong with both audiences and critics at 92% certified fresh on the website. Critic consensus says lust and violence collide to powerfully pulpy effect in Love Lies Bleeding, a well-acted addition to writer-director Rose Glass's growing body of exceptional work. Audiences also give the movie exceptional reviews, with wide reception standing at 89% with the public. Also, forgive the audio. It is raining today. It just started raining about 15 minutes ago, and I'm pretty sure the mic is capturing it, so I don't feel like re-recording this episode like I did with Dune, so please bear with me as you hear the rain in the background. It's a bit surprising to see it have such a high percentage with the audience, though. A lot of the word of mouth I've seen from reviewers is that they think the movie is too raunchy and mean-spirited. One reviewer actually cited that he was disappointed in Ed Harris for deciding to involve himself with such, quote, filth. Let's be honest for a second here, and I don't like to talk about politics a lot on my podcast, but we have to address the elephant in the room. This movie is clearly created by and aimed for liberal audiences. It features 2 queer actors, directed by a female director, and the trailers indicate that the main antagonist is a male figure. So I don't really understand the logic of a clearly conservative person going in and watching this with a closed mind. I don't blame them for trying to watch the film. That's not what I'm getting at. I just think, like, if you go into this movie, even if you're politically on the other side of the spectrum, you need to go in with an open mind. Don't go in thinking that these characters are going to behave and act the way that you do, or they're going to believe in the same things that you do. Even if you disagree with the perspective that the film takes, going in with an open mind would help you get past those political obstacles. I don't like the idea that some actors and directors have said, my movie wasn't made for you. This movie wasn't marketed like that, nor was it supposed to. All of the characters in this movie are equally flawed. They have to overcome their poor decisions and noble motivations. This isn't like the Marvels where the actors and the director want to discourage other demographics from watching their movie. That's not what Rose Glass did with this movie. And it's a bit disappointing to see that there were some audience members who truly believe that that's the case, that they were pointing them out with this film, and that's not what they were going for at all. It does handle heavy subjects like domestic abuse and male dominance over their daughters, but it's done in a way that's very entertaining and understandable. I hope that if you go watch this film, you'll give it the proper respect it deserves. Go in with an open mind and get immersed in it. If you're uncomfortable with the subject matter or the sexuality of the characters, it doesn't mean it's a poorly made movie. It just isn't your cup of tea, and that's completely fine. It's okay to disagree with what the characters are doing, as long as you see the merits in what you're watching on screen, and that's what I did with this movie. I saw it for how well it was made and how amazing the actors and the sequences are. It's a very intense film. I'm going to be very interested to see the discourse surrounding the film when it comes to on-demand services and streaming services. I wonder if the 89% audience rating is going to hold still after that. Now, we turn our attention to filmmaking factoids, a segment of the show where we go into some behind-the-scenes trivia and look into the process of how Love Lies Bleeding was made. I only have a few of them today. So the first one is Ed Harris. Originally, Ed Harris wore very long hair extensions as a joke, but Rose Glass actually liked it so much that she told him to keep it in the film. I think it's a very good choice. He's imposing when he's wearing those long extensions. He looks really creepy. I like these next two. So, like her character in the film, and I alluded to this earlier, Katie O'Brien used to be a competitive bodybuilder in real life. And you could tell that body was not just made by milk. Oh man, she was amazing to look at in this film. I don't know how you guys feel about masculine looking female bodies, but when you see a body that is sculpted and crafted the way that Katie's is in this movie, you can't stop but stare. It's insane how much definition she has in her body. It's nuts. Now, Katie O'Brien learned about her role through social media when a fan sent her a post with a casting call that indicated that they were looking for a queer bodybuilder. She checked both of those boxes easily. Good on her. I think this is a star-turning role for her. Now, Alondra Chapman, who stands on the stage left of Katie O'Brien during the competition scene, is actually a real competitive bodybuilder. She's a 3-time champion of the Natural Olympia for the INBA and PNBA. So I got to give Glass and the casting director a lot of kudos on this to not only land Katie O'Brien for her bodybuilding background, but to actually get bodybuilders in this film. It's pretty nice. And then our last factoid is one that's very strange. In recent news, a moviegoer in Michigan was arrested for lewd behavior, including nudity and violations of smoking and drinking alcohol. I said it on my intro as a joke, like people would bring in the Dune popcorn bucket, but some motherfucking fan in Michigan really got turned on by this movie and took it a bit too far. So, word of warning, guys, this movie is very sexual, so you might feel certain things in this movie. So there we have it. We've reached the final destination of our spoiler-free review of Love Lies Bleeding. If you don't care for spoilers, stay after the outro to hear what I have to say about the big moment for the film. But if this is the end of the show for you, thank you so much for listening. I'll return next week with the highly anticipated follow-up to Ghostbusters Afterlife with Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. Follow the show on social media. I'm on X and Instagram. Search for PCwithGIL. Stay up to date on the latest videos by subscribing on YouTube so you don't miss an episode. That's going to do it here. I hope you have a good week and go catch a movie. All right, I'm going to keep this spoiler section quick and simple. There are two major points in this story that I want to discuss that have hampered people's perceptions of this film. The first of which was the moment in the closing minutes of the film when Lou is seemingly about to get shot to death by her father. After taking a bullet to the leg and crawling away to get away from him, Lou stands over his daughter, prepared to put her to rest. This comes after a sequence where Lou and Jackie reconcile their differences, and Lou heroically decides to sacrifice herself to ensure that Jackie gets away safely and that her father gets what's coming to him. Throughout the film, we've seen fantastical elements thrown into the more subdued moments. When Jackie is juicing up on steroids, we see her lose control of her mind. The more unhinged she becomes, we are given more shots of her muscles growing. Whether or not you can take these shots as a literal representation of Jackie hulking out, or a metaphorical representation of her transformation into an animalistic psychopath, the shots are a bit jarring when you first see them. These hulking shots lay into the finale of the film when Jackie goes back to save Lou. We see her bulk out one final time, and we see her step up as a 50-foot woman. Holy shit. She stands up 50 feet tall and grabs Lou Sr., breaking his limbs and pinning him down for Luke to extract revenge on her father. Everyone in the theater had the same exact reaction. What the fuck is happening? This immersive world that they've built, the gritty realism of the situation that the character's in, they nearly get broken by this moment alone. It quite literally looks as if the physical transformation of Jackie is happening because of the steroids that she's been taking. They are some sort of super soldier serum. It is absolutely bonkers. I tried to dissect this moment, because I thought that there was no way that this was actually physically happening in the film. Now, even though the scenes were planted very early on, I was concerned that this was a way too over-the-top kind of way of presenting a surreal superhero origin story. But after sitting with it for a couple hours, I began thinking more analytically about it, especially since the next shot we get of them shows Lou and Jackie running amongst the clouds. I'm keen to believe that this is more of a figurative fantasy sequence than a literal fantasy sequence. Jackie's enormous stature is a representation of this goddess-like status that Lou has always seen her as. Even from the moment that they first meet at the gym, Jackie, to Lou, is the superhero that she needs, that is able to free her from the oppression of her family. And that the two of them running through the clouds is the punctuation on the moment where Lou finally feels free of her father. But that isn't the final scene. There's one more added on to the end of these final minutes that certainly is left for interpretation. After Jackie killed both JJ and Daisy, the couple disposes of their bodies. JJ was graphically killed in this movie, and it's really cathartic. Jackie stomps his face into the corner of a coffee table, and we see his jaw literally rip apart from his face. He's then rolled up into his car, and they send the car careening into a crevasse, and then they light it on fire. It may sound like he got a lot out of that, but trust me, it's very much worth it. Now, Daisy, on the other hand, she gets an even worse fate. Daisy, the strung-out junkie that is in love with Lou, is hot on Jackie's trail. She manipulates Lou into going out with her by threatening to go to the police to expose that Lou and Jackie were seen convoying JJ's vehicle the night that he was found dead. In one of the kinder moments of his screen time, Lou Sr. has Jackie murder Daisy to protect his daughter. Jackie shoots Daisy through the face, and the two of them now have to roll up her body in a rug and dispose of it. The final shot of the film is of Jackie asleep in the passenger seat of Lou's truck, but Lou sees Daisy's corpse still moving in the bed of the truck. She pulls off to the side of the road, where she finds that Daisy is still alive, but instead of trying to save her and getting her medical attention, Lou strangles Daisy to death and carries her body off into the distance to get rid of it. The haunting implication of this action is that Lou isn't precisely free from her father's reign of terror. She is still very much like him, willing to murder people and cover up the dirty work. And the film closes with uncertainty into how much longer the two women can keep up this charade. As I mentioned in the spoiler-free review, I really enjoyed this movie. Although I do understand that it's an acquired taste, it's far better than that of Drive-Away Dolls. It's one of the strongest performances of Kristen Stewart's career, and I hope that you guys give it a chance. And that is it. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I will see you next time.